And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the naked city, the city of 1,000 stories. And since they haven't figured out a way to close the Foxy Lady yet again, it's still the naked city. Legs and eggs. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty, mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and CoalitionRadio.us. So, we're a little bit out of sorts today. Traffic, as usual, coming into the capital city was a mess. But I think I'm even a little bit more verklempt because of the shenanigans, if you will, of the past 48 hours. In the past 48 hours, we as Rhode Islanders, if you're local, have been attributed to yet another series of delusions perpetrated to or perpetrated upon by our Governor Gina Raimondo. First, the State of the State speech, which talked about a state that I'd like to live in someday. And then, of course, today's budget atrocities, which, you know, it's tough. Living in Rhode Island and commenting on the body politic is often considered compared to a 1950s game show. It was called Can You Top This?, in which people made increasingly bizarre statements about their profession, and you had to figure out who was telling the truth. Well, I'll make two comparisons to Rhode Island from 1950s, 60s era television. First of all, Can You Top This? And seemingly, astonishingly, in ways that were altogether unanticipated, our governor does actually manage to top this. Unfortunately, it's not unlike a parody that occurred on a mid-60s and 70s variety show, the Carl Burnett Show, where she did her own little soap opera and she named it As the Stomach Turns. And that is as fitting a metaphor for Rhode Island as Can You Top This? Because this budget, and I've been a Rhode Islander now for going on 39 years, as they say, is perhaps the most incredible perversion of the public will, of good government, of any moral structure that I've seen in my lifetime. And understand, I've lived in places like New Jersey, I've lived in places like New York City. But no, Rhode Island seems to have won the championship. Maybe this is Olympic trials for Can You Top This? This is a subject we're going to be covering at some length in the next few weeks. Joining me in the 7 o'clock hour will be Ellen Smith. And if you've ever worked in and around the medical cannabis movement, you'll know that Ellen is a medical cannabis warrior, a participant, and someone who's spares few words in summing up government's approach at this point to the medical cannabis program. And for whatever reason, our Governor Gina Raimondo seems to have had this program in her spotlight, if you will, her target, since almost the minute she was elected. I'm not sure why. It's an issue we're going to spend a lot of time in. But joining me right now is a great friend of the program, a great friend of Liberty, someone whose moral credentials are unimpeachable, who is a participant, who managed, I think, the ultimate survivor's test. He spent quality time up at Halitosis Hall for several years and managed to essentially leave with his pride, his dignity, his sense of perspective, his moral code, and a high level of intelligence still intact. And for that, I'm not quite sure what to say. And of course, I'm talking about Representative Bob Lancia. Bob, welcome back to the show. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Pat. You too.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, and we're not going to dwell on this tonight, but he's here to discuss his run to become the chairman of the Rhode Island Republican Party. So part and parcel of that is his experiences running for office, because political parties exist for one simple reason: to elect people. Mm-hmm. Everything else ultimately is important, but is secondary. They are a vehicle for which to elect people to public office. There are those people, particularly my movement, Liberty Movement, who decry political parties. So they form their own organizations when they run for office, and they don't call them political parties, but guess what they are? Political parties. Merely entering into a contest for government places you in the body politic. In that arena, I don't believe, despite some of the unsavory characters, particularly here in Rhode Island, who participated in it on a regular basis for their own personal profit and their own personal gain. I still believe in the nobility of running for political office, which is why we celebrate people, win or lose. And I consider it to be the ultimate act of patriotism, short of serving in our nation's military. Mr. Lancia has actually done both. So let's give me a little post-mortem on the election. What happened? You had gotten in with razor-thin margins, despite an overwhelming opposition just 2 years before, and I mean razor-thin margins. You'd managed to overcome it. This time, you got caught in the blue wave that, well, we all did. But that's a simplification. Yeah. You lived it. Yeah. So give us your thoughts.
Well, I think there was a couple of things going on. The Rhode Island Republican Party, let's face it, it's a fractured party, and that's not an understatement for sure. It got pretty. I think it got pretty ugly in terms of stunts pulled in front of City Hall and people in chicken suits and all kinds of things. But you had these various candidates declaring themselves no longer part of the Republican Party. But then if you had people that like these people or wanted to support these people, once they left the party, some people still wanted to support them. And ultimately, what happened is there was quite a dynamic going on. There was a lot of stress and a certain amount of just relationships got frayed, and can we put it back together? I mean, that's really bottom line. And depending who you lined up with, you would get some or no help, and maybe even they'd come after you too. So there was a lot going on, and I saw it, A to Z, right across the gamut. And I got caught in that dynamic myself.
You and I are old enough to call it the catbird seat, right? We were in the catbird seat.
Yep.
This current strain, if you will, on the party, stretches back much further than this election.
Yes.
The moment the mayor of Cranston decided to refer to Ken Block supporters as blockheads.
Yes.
Which I was a proud blockhead.
Mm-hmm.
I supported Ken Block. I still think he, to this day, would have been the very best governor that we've had in recent memory. He and I have philosophical differences politically, but that's unimportant. In a situation like we're in the state of Rhode Island, it's like when football teams draft. Sometimes they go for the best athlete. Mm-hmm. I think Ken Block would have been the best athlete at that point in time. When Ken Block did not win the primary, then of course I ended up voting for Bob Healy proudly, and I would vote for Bob Healy in a heartbeat. God bless if he were still with us. I'd like to think that Bob Healy would have played a very important role in the founding and the growth of the libertarian movement here in the state. Not just the party, but the movement in general. In your opinion, has the Republican Party, even recovered from that yet, or is there still festering?
It has absolutely not recovered from that yet. I mean, there are a lot of people on the outside. There are a lot of people who are no longer part of the Republican Party, who are kind of doing their own thing, but still have, they still have some connection to the party by helping candidates and things like that. There is that, and and there is, I believe, also a lot of, unfortunately, time-wasted energy that if we could all come together and work as a group, because we're facing a dynamic I don't think we've ever faced before. I mean, you got your mainline Democrat, you got progressive Democrat, and then you got your Republican Party. And honestly, when Minority Leader Filippi gave his address, he was doing that as a minority leader of 9 people. To think that the leader of the progressives, if he or she had chosen to speak, would have been representing 20 people.
Right.
I mean, so it's interesting. So we're not hearing from them, but we know what they're doing, because I think there's about 20 progressives in the House right now. They're about 6 away from being able to stop the budget cold. And you see a lot going on now with rules and all kinds of things. And, I think it's a trend that's going to continue. I think it's going to continue.
At a certain point, and this is a challenging conversation, by the way, because with the exception of only a handful, I'm certainly not looking to vilify people. I think we're trying to have a mature arm's length analysis of a product and a project and a population that has become, I don't even know if anyone really remembers the first thing that somebody said to get anybody mad at this point, other than, I guess the historical dividing line is the blockhead commercial. I think that's what most people would agree. Took a difficult situation. And you can go back even further than that. You can look at the head of the race that you're involved in, that was decided by one contested vote just 2 years before that, when Mark Smiley ran against a good doctor. Was that 2 or 4 years? Regardless,
Yep.
you've got this schism.
Yep.
And when you have a schism like that, sometimes you have to go back and start from the basics.
Yes.
In your mind, what is it that makes a Rhode Island Republican? Define that for me, if you can.
Well, I mean, for me, a Republican has always been one that believed in, smaller government, lower taxes, more freedom, those kind of basics for me, And what's happened is, we've gotten sidetracked on a lot of side issues. I mean, depending on, and I believe instead of focusing on the financials, we've, got off into my denomination, American Baptist Church is the same thing. In the 70s, they almost killed themselves, the denomination. Instead of focusing on the faith, they focused on the social issues in the 70s. And wrote a very, very good book about it, Tony Campolo. Can this church be saved? And he was a professor out in Eastern College in Pennsylvania, but really delineated, when something like this happens. And I think we've gotten so sidetracked with so many things that I think the focus at this point, I said last election, this one we just completed, was Custer's last stand. Well, guess what? It was a slaughter, an absolute slaughter. Can we recover from that? And that's one of the reasons, someone approached me about possibly running for chair, because I'm not done yet, and I'm going to be doing something, but I talked to my wife, Mary Ann, and I said, what should I do? And she says, I think you need to try to fix the party. And that's a selfless thing. It's not a paid position. You just do it because, you think it's the right thing to do. So I'm willing to put myself out there. And plus the fact that I and my wife are both retired, I can do, as you know how I am now, 24/7, 365 days a year, sometimes 2, 3, 4 events a day. That's the same energy and perspective I would take to a job like that, because it's the only way we're going to be successful. The other thing, you know it as well as I do, the number of minorities in this state right now, the Republican Party has become more reflective of the population. And unless we define who we are, they don't know what a Republican, when you say Republican, they think Trump. And it's more than Trump, you know what I mean? Trump's one president. He's not the party, but we haven't done a good job of defining ourselves.
Right, because ultimately there are a lot of people non-Republicans, and the Republican Party is such a minority that they have to get other people who don't like them to vote for them. That's right. Is that, unfortunately, at this point, for the party, Trump defines the Republican Party.
That's right.
Is there, at this point in time, Alan Fung is term limited. I can't imagine he's going to run for governor again. Who knows? Hillary keeps talking about running for president again.
Yeah. Sondland ran 3 times.
Sondland ran 3 times.
And he won on the 3rd time.
Okay. And
but he was a millionaire, too.
Right. And he actually owned a mansion in the yacht. That other character from the East Side who was the, she ran 3 times, too, I think, didn't she?
Yes.
Myrna.
Yep.
Mirth York.
Mirth York, yep, that's right.
How can we forget Mirth York? She's the evil stepmother, if you will, of some of the folks who are running Providence as we speak. Now then you migrate past Healy. There is still a schism that blames, incredibly enough, a significant part of the Republicans' downfall on Bob Healy. Now what's interesting about this election, this proved with beyond the shadow of a doubt that Bob Healy did not steal more votes from the Republicans than he stole from the Democrats. I mean, it's just the why came out. A good friend of mine, someone I respect and thinks a lot, Mike Rinaldi, was involved with the Healy campaign and did a voter analysis and found out that probably Jeter lost more votes to Bob Healy than Mr. Fung did the first time around. And yet there is that same kind of, I would say, call the ambulance, because people will still spit that out in a chat room, in a Facebook chat room. How do you motivate people to just, what's that song from Disney, Let It Go? How do you do that?
Well, being in the religion business, we talk about Christian charity, but a willingness to let go, and we say let go, let God, but at least let go and allow an opportunity for some healing. I mean, to kind of air it out a little bit. I think that's kind of been done, but agree that there's a greater issue at play here the need to take the state back, and we are in such a bad place. And this last couple of days just was more evidence of it. And I mean, what's being proposed now? I mean, I thought it was bad, but I didn't think it could get any worse. Wow. And the other thing I got to say, the night of the day before the State of the State, what happens? That young child, special needs child, dies in a home in Oakland Beach Walk, and we learned much about the woman who's caring for the children and everything. And so she dies. Did we have a moment of silence for her up at the State House? Did anyone wear some kind of a ribbon or somebody, or take a moment to remember this child? Or was it just another casualty, you know?
Yeah, another casualty in the line of fire. Gina Raimondo's, as Dan York spent a few hours yesterday, you know, here at the Coalition, we're not afraid to talk about other media figures. Did, I thought, a very noble job of covering the question, where was Gina Raimondo during the whole public release of this?
Yes.
Nowhere to be found. Yet on the same day, she was there hugging four-year-olds, under the notion of universal kindergarten for everybody.
Yes. And when I was doing my sex offender forums in Cranston, I was trying to get the sex offender legislation passed. Mm-hmm. The weekend of my 3 forums, the Saturday, the Sunday, and then the Monday, 3 elementary schools, the speaker came to the first one. It was a place where we shared a common folks. And I thought he was on board with the legislation, but when he started to speak, it sounded like he was not, and he was ready to step away. But that happened to be the same weekend that 3 children had died in DCF custody. So I turned to the speaker. I said, Speaker, with all due respect, I said, I will not allow one child to be murdered, molested, raped, or killed. And he turns to Richard Espel's attorney and says, draft Lancia's legislation. But it took that. I mean, we had to get to that point. Right. But now, did we learn anything? Apparently not. We have kids that were in that home prostitution. You know, they were farming out for prostitution. We've got kids, a friend of mine was telling me, we've got like 55, 56 kids we can't even account for. And now we have a house where, you know, it wasn't properly vetted, and we allowed the woman to, you know, she's receiving $5,000 a month. She's got eight special needs children, and she can't even take care of herself. I mean, there are so many questions. And remember, Congressman Cicilline went down to the border, right? Because we had that child killed at the border. Yeah, right. All well and good. But you know what? I would have liked to have seen him show up here in Rhode Island, you know, with that same kind of passion and fire because of that situation. And honestly, the federal government really needs, just like we talk about UHIP, the federal government needs to come in and do a complete evaluation, investigation of DCF. I honestly believe that. Because this is an isolated incident. This has been going on and on and on and on and on.
More children have died this year in Rhode Island than out at the border.
Yes, every year. It's unbelievable. But, you know, moving on from that. So we move on from that, and then we hear the details now on the budget. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. So many things that, you know, in my time, last 4 years, we fought hard for. Getting rid of beach fees, ending scoops, 911, all these things. What happened? They're going to reinstitute everything.
There is actually, has been reported to me by another contributor to the show, my good friend Bella Robinson, that there is now going to be, and she showed me the legislation. I haven't a chance to read it, but Bella's sharp as tacks. A $2 surcharge on the cover charge
to go to the strip clubs
to take money for rape kits. Who comes up with the idea?
I know. And a good friend of mine had said, okay, we've got gambling. We're going to legalize drugs. He says, what's left? And I think one of the councilwomen in Providence, I'm not sure, she was very concerned, obviously, about the folks at Foxy Lady. Did she make a point at one time? Maybe we needed to legalize prostitution. Did you hear that? Somebody.
Yeah, no, I did, and this is one of those subjects where you and I will probably disagree on, but that's because I believe in the end of prohibition as we know it, because after how many years?
But to be known as a state of drugs, gambling, and prostitution.
We are the combat zone of New England. We
you
already
know,
are. Anyone who knows me personally knows I have 3 or 4 jobs, and one of them entails driving around Providence at 3 in the morning. I can tell you, I see things that cannot be unseen.
No. Are you in favor of the mobile gambling?
God, no. As a concept, to me, as a libertarian, we don't support or oppose behavior. Mm-hmm. We simply believe that behavior that exists between two consenting adults, where there is no harm accrued to anyone else, it should be the decision of those two consenting adults. So, for example, we have a very strong record on marriage equality. Now, on a personal level, most of us feel that people should be able, we have gay friends, gay family members. I will never embark on one of these jihads on gay folks because that's just wrong. It's immoral. But on a legal sense, marriage is a property rights contract between two people as far as the state goes. Now, you're religious. I happen to be religious, so I believe in God and Jesus Christ, and I believe that the church should validate. But that's my choice. And when it comes to gambling, my concern is primarily constitutional. We have a constitution in Rhode Island that says that if there is an expansion of gaming, it needs to be voted on both by the city in which it'll take place and by the state. And they've chosen to ignore that. I believe that to be a constitutional crisis. And it's something I'm trying to work on in the background. It's not an issue. So that law exists. So now take that to the next level. Mobile gaming. Now, we're already getting regaled with stories of standing line only. If someone wants to gamble, I personally, not that I don't gamble, I've gambled a few times and I've felt horrible when I've lost. It's not a happy thing for me. Not a happy place. For some people it is. They choose to do that. They should be able to do it anywhere they want. The whole notion that we've got a state that is possibly one of the worst nanny states in America, and it was pointed out by smarter minds than I today that Gina's big shtick, if you will, the persona she adapts is this mothering, I'm going to keep you safe. Unless, of course, you're a DCYF. Unless, of course, but at the same token, if it's all of these things are immoral and are arrestable, why is the state given the right to engage in this? I think anybody who owns a business here, or anybody who wants to run a game of chance, should be able to. If it's okay for the state, why can't I do it?
Yeah. When they have the pools, when they have the special event, you can't run a pool. Why can't I run a pool? It's just a fun little activity.
Right. I mean,
not professional gambling operation.
Yeah, but I should, quite frankly, if it's okay for the state to do it, I feel like that I should be able to set up a table outside and run a craps table for them. I mean, this notion that behavior is either sanctioned. We live in a permission society where we seek to get permission from the state to be able to engage in acts that are, quite frankly, an extension of the human condition. The notion that we have to get approval from the state is an abomination to me. And I, as a libertarian, we're going to continue to educate the Rhode Island public every day. Now, which draws us back to the message of the Republican Party. The Republican Party in this state right now has no message.
I agree, and that is the problem. What does it mean to be a Rhode Island Republican?
Right.
And so for me, I was in Portsmouth last night. We were talking about this, and I said, okay, so we might be off left, right, of center, whatever. I said, but are there 5 or 6 things maybe that we could agree? Focus more because we're in a mess. Financial. Let's focus on the financial. Let's talk about what it means to be a Republican in terms of the financials. And so I said to the people last night, I said, how could everybody be in agreement with the fact that we need zero-based budgeting? Don't tell me what you got this year and what you tell me what you're getting, and I'll tell you if you need that. I mean, an inspector general who wrote waste, fraud, and abuse. Maybe an efficiency expert to go in to look for redundancies and things like that. Voter initiative, a line item veto. Those are some things that I think that we could all agree, things that would hopefully get the state on a more solid financial footing, get people more of their money back. I mean, 911 fees, for heaven's sakes, they're still stealing $10 million a year, and over the last 10 years, 18 years, whatever, $170 to $180 million, and there's no end in sight.
And I haven't even had a chance to look at the scoops in this go around, this budget. Has anyone developed it's been out for 12 hours? Has anyone developed a comprehensive list of scoops?
They have. I saw a couple of them, but it's stuff that I was not familiar with this time. She's going into different agencies to scoop, not the stuff that she's been into before, like energy efficiency and some of the other ones, but she's into some other areas that she's scooping from.
And the problem here is that I'm not a Republican, obviously. Some of my best friends are Republicans. The problem here is that the failure of the Republican Party has created a vacuum of leadership.
Yes.
And there are many people who consider the Republican Party to be the loyal opposition. I don't. I consider the Libertarian Party to be the loyal opposition because, again, the Republican Party members, General Assembly people have voted to support red flag laws. They've voted at times in favor of the budget. They voted, on and on and on. This crazy mixed bag of what we support. You had your minority leader, your current minority leader, new one, last year was talking about different ways that we could make a quasi, private-public partnership work with the Pawsox Stadium. Huh? How's that work? That ain't that. So, what's this set of personality conflicts and these schisms have created is a situation where a governor who is grotesquely unpopular managed to get 52% of the vote.
You've hit that right on the head. Anybody can say whatever they want to say, but she got 52% of the vote,
right.
And that sends a message to people,
right.
And that gives her the mandate that in past years, whether it's Chafee, whatever, said you don't have a mandate, you didn't crack 50%. She got 52.
Right.
So that changes some of the dynamics too, and I think this is why she's really feeling her oats, and that she can almost put out whatever she wants to.
I mean, she acted like she had a mandate at 39. Now at 52, see, in Gina world, 39% a mandate, 52% a landslide.
And which is why she's directly confronting the speaker on his car tax, for instance,
Right.
That shocked me, So I think she's definitely feeling her oats.
No, and this is directly attributable to the horrific campaign that was run by the Republican Party. See, here's my contention, and as a non-Republican, but we share beliefs on. There's overlap between Libertarians and Republicans, not complete.
And I'm the vice chair of the Rhode Island Republican Libertarian Caucus, so yes, I agree with you. Rush Herge on the chair.
Right.
Yes.
So the problem is this complete chaos of the Republican Party has prevented other people from assuming the floor because of the historical connection between Republicans versus Democrats. Now, in my opinion, this is prima facie why we have to destroy the duopoly, why we need multiple parties in this state. So what you've got is candidates who, here's another issue. I mean, you've got candidates who claim they weren't even remotely supported by the party.
And that is a true statement. I mean, the last quarter of fundraising for the election, $114,000 for the Democrats, $1,000 for the Republicans.
Wow.
How are you going to win a race like that? And I think
we even raised more than that.
Steve Frias was talking over at an event, and he was making the point. He says, we're so small and so fractured. He says each candidate really becomes their own man or woman. I mean, they're running, and really it's a beauty contest. I mean, it's their own, you know what I mean? They're just trying to sell themselves because there's no, you're not connecting with anybody, and you're really trying to, it's a glamour personality contest, a glamour beauty contest. That's what it comes down to. How good can I make myself look? Because the cavalry's not coming, there's no cavalry.
Right.
You're on your own, start to finish.
Right. And so, given the state's long and storied history of giveaways and coat hanger honors and this whole milieu, as opposed to Malay, this milieu of leeches.
Yep.
Now this governor is going to have, license to kill.
Oh.
I mean, the amount of money she's going to be able to spread around.
Oh, and that budget is just just testament to that. I mean, I'm looking through that thing. It's unbelievable. I mean, talk about grab every possible place you can grab a dollar. I mean, the thing I was fighting for, free access to the beach. Well, the speaker says, "Oh, that was my idea. A light bulb came on and he lowered it." But that was Bob Lancia want to get rid of the beach fees. What did they do after they got rid of the beach fees? The next year they put on a summer rental tax on the houses. What did he do with that? Do you think they did help fix the beaches and make them nice and put the trash cans? No. General fund, right? Now she wants to raise the fees at both the parks and that again. She wants to tax Netflix. She wants to add more tax onto cigarettes. Just the things they want to tax. What was the other thing? A 7% tax on I don't know, something else. But it's just one thing after another. It's just and of course I got to talk about my friend Susan Wynn. Her and her husband own one of the funeral homes, and they're still going to be auditing funeral homes. My bill, Senator Lombardi, Senate version, I put the House version in, that would stop taxing urns and prayer cards. It's going to generate only $200,000 a year, and it's all within audits. All audits. You're so desperate. it's pathetic.
Right. So, first of all, when is the convention that you folks?
Sure. Well, people are going to formally announce between the 1st and the 15th of February that they want to be state party chair, and then it'll be in mid-March.
Right. Now, there's already a couple of people who kind of jumped into the fray besides yourself.
Yes.
One young lady, by all accounts, appears to be the favorite of the Funkinistas. And it's interesting because with Alan Fung as being term limited, and given the history of his failures, it's on so many levels. And I know you had your own interesting experiences when you were a state rep. Should he be considered leadership material for the party going forward?
I think there needs to be a new leader, and I think the leader needs to be the RIGOP chair. Because, I was involved since 06. I got out in 04 after I shattered my shoulder. But from 06 on, the Republican Party has always been about the gubernatorial race.
Right.
When I first was up running, we were at the State House. The big thing was to get your picture with Kacheri, right, Governor Kacheri. See, you stand in line, you run over quick, take a quick, just off you go. We never hear from him again, or really the party. We're on our own. No money, no help, and this is how we've really been running this party. Now, except for the 3 special elections we did. They dumped major money, but we still lost all 3 elections. But there's no boots on the ground. I don't think we have these cities and town committees, many of them in place. And we need to have 113 seats. Needs to be 113 candidates, and we need to properly fund them. But, many organizations have even moved out of the state because of the fact that they don't see the Republican Party of Rhode Island as a viable entity. They're not willing to give to it. They're not willing to, to get involved in it. And we've got to show them that we are, somebody that deserves recognition and help. And that's another part of it. I'm going to show that we're vibrant and that we're moving and we're making things. And the other part is the state is now 14% Latino, 6% African American. When I go to so many events, and we joke about this, but they say, you know what, we love you and your wife, Rep. Lancia. There's only one problem. You're a Republican. And, I get it. I get it.
Right, and then you have people who are Republican running as independents because they're afraid.
Yep.
One that I've always teased, I won't say his name, but like Peter, 3 times he denied the party. And 3 times he lost, while simultaneously doing nothing to build the party.
Yes. Yep.
Because even well-run losing candidacies can help the party.
True.
Emphasis on well-run, issues-driven. So,
well, Monday is Martin Luther King Black Ministers Alliance Scholarship Breakfast at Rhodes and Pawtuxet, and my table, as it always is, we show diversity, and I'm going to have a young Latina and a young African American woman and a young Latino young man. Because my wife and I are in those communities. We're out there. We're doing what the party should be doing. And my wife and I, too, the only one that represent the Republican Party out in the communities. And people love us. They invite us to things. We go. We support them. They support us back. And, we need to do that. We need to connect with these people, not just at election time. We need to be with them, throughout the whole 2-year cycle, get to know them. And, there are some conservative folks out there. There are people who are not happy with the way things are going. But they don't see an option other than voting D all the time. And we've got to give them an option, show them a better way, that there's a better way to do things. So, yeah.
Now, so what's, upon being elected party chair, after you're whisked for security reasons out the back door from certain constituencies, what's your first order of business? What do you do? What's the lineup? What
in terms of
just your first official act as
party chair?
Party chair. Yeah.
Well, first thing would be I think we want to do a major fundraiser, but it would be a fundraiser kind of really a team building kind of a thing. We would get people together. I said on Tara Granahan's show, we can mention other shows, I said on Tara, I said, I want to let the disaffected members know that, there's a home, they can come back, that, and I would like to do that. A lot of people walked away for a variety of reasons, like to bring people back in, but we got to be for the same reason, the same point, which is to win seats, which is to take our government back. So that would be the goal. The second thing is we're raising money, but at the same time, starting the day after the election, start recruiting candidates. Start recruiting candidates. So we should do it not now, not 2 years from now, not begging people in June to please run to try to fill out at least 40 places. No, we're going to have 113 candidates. I remember when John Robitaille ran, I helped him with his campaign with Mike Napolitano, communications director. He had an idea at one point. He says, you know what, we should get all the candidates together. We should go, there's a barn out east or west Greenwich, had a huge American flag. Let's go out there, everybody, and let's take a picture together. Let's show some unity. Let's work together, And that's the last gubernatorial candidate I remember even trying to do anything like that.
Right.
So that's what we need to do.
Yeah, if your gubernatorial candidate is the beneficiary of 2 or 3 divisive primaries while simultaneously hijacking town committees, you're not going to generate a lot of kumbaya, are you?
No, you really. I mean, it's about building grassroots, and it's about getting General Assembly candidates elected. Again, a minority leader. Great speech, but you represent 9 people. Where's that going? If I think some people have said that Christopher Blajewski is kind of the head of the progressives. So maybe somebody like Chris Blajewski should have been given the response because he's got 20 people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you look at numbers.
So much happens at a more established political party, like the Republican Party, at the town committee level. Mm-hmm. Cranston, in one sense, should have been ground zero in terms of unity, and should have been, given the gubernatorial candidate's presence, should have been really an example for the rest of the state to follow. Because you also had the specter of an opposing speaker within that community. Little birdies have told me it was anything but. What, if you're willing to, what happened in Cranston?
Well, I honestly just think, like last election, there's a challenge in Cranston, and the challenge is you have people over the years who have switched parties, to one thing becomes something else. But you've also had the fact that the speaker commands so much power and authority that, and the city is a beneficiary of many of the things that the speaker does. So, I mean, both on the Republican and the Democrat side, it's really an odd pairing for so many reasons. And so the speaker, for all intents and purposes, really controls the city, and and people work with him. And even when Steve Freyes was running, a lot of people did not support Steve. They supported the speaker because they were more concerned with the speaker losing and the conservative voice leaving the General Assembly than they did about, as the Journal said over and over again, a representative gets elected who has no power, no authority, and even today's editorial mentioned they never never miss an opportunity to put an adjective on the Republican Party. Today it was the microscopic Republican Party. Another week it's the party that could meet in a phone booth, things like this. So they're always giving us a subtle little whack, Not that we don't deserve it, but because we haven't done our homework.
Well, yeah, but it's also unfair because, institutionally, I can tell you from my experience as the chairman of another political party, the rules are so rigged. Now, that's not to make excuses for the personal warfare that certain leaders of the Republican Party have conducted on others. That's a separate issue. But the Providence Journal, under the leadership of Mr. Acorn, they should look inward. Mm-hmm. I'll continue to ask him the question that he refuses to answer. I've asked him personally. I've asked him on TV. If they had endorsed Dawson Hudson, I'm not saying that would have guaranteed a win, but for a newspaper and an organization that so clearly cries on every shoulder about freedom of the press, very often exaggerated, it's freedom of their press. They're not interested in playing nice with other people. That the recently dearly departed Attorney General was an abomination on every single level. And I always find it interesting because when an organization like the Providence Journal fails to show courage, isn't it something when they're always the first to have it bite them in the... Mm-hmm. their rather ample posterior, because essentially, despite them trying to get along with Mr. Kilmartin, they frequently were the target. But so for the Journal to beat up on people who are ultimately volunteers, who you may consider their efforts misguided. Just by the way, a newspaper that has lost the circulation and is in a dead end like they are, to point out other organizations who are volunteers and criticize their managerial techniques is amusing, to say the least. All right, let's be blunt here. No one's going to do any case studies in the Projo anytime soon on how to eclipse the emerging, internet and its impact on news. No one. If anything, they are going to be the poster children for taking a mid-market newspaper and literally watching it sink into oblivion.
Oh, it's just...
So the Journal has, and their vilification of Brandon Bell, regardless of how you feel personally about Brandon's tenure, I thought was just an abomination. To pick on a person personally like that, who I think had the best interest in, I'm not going to agree with everything he did. He's kind of the opposition for me. Mm-hmm. But to pick on him personally, as a volunteer, as someone who was trying to contribute, at best that's unfortunate. So the Journal has no moral standing whatsoever in the community to dictate anything to anyone at any time, in any place, in any reason. In any form, too. You can't do that either. So you get it. The town committees seem to be the ones that are struggling.
Oh yes, and we visited. My wife and I visited, I think 5 so far, and they're in the reorganization mode. But I think one of the things you do notice is that it's a lot of the same folks, and they need to be bringing in the new, younger members, but even the Democratic Party isn't what it used to be. But so that's the challenge and the goal. And I had one gentleman, he's in a community that's more heavily minority, and he said, I'd love to sit down and talk to you sometime. How do we reach out to these other groups? And that is a very good question when 14% of the population, and again 6 African American, 14. That's 20% of the population. You've got to be reaching out to these people. They got a lot of the same issues and problems you have: taxes, raising families, keeping as much money as they can, and we need to encourage these folks and let them know, because a lot of times right now it's capitalism. Let's face it, it's a battle. Capitalism versus socialism, and right now socialism. Look what's going on in Washington. Socialism is running wild. But we've seen that story before. We know how it ends.
Right. We know how the movie ends, and it ends badly. What can you do as a party? So we understand then that the town committees have to be reached out to, and they have to be energized. In the run-up to the show, we were talking about Donald Trump. It's clear that in a blue state like this, that Donald Trump had an extra heavy impact on the voters here in the state, particularly in the city of Providence, where Donald Trump could be held out as a bogeyman to folks who are people of color, to folks in a variety of minority communities, folks who feel who are left of center, who clearly did not. I mean, Gina Raimondo still polls terribly. What can be done about Donald Trump, or to a certain point, do you just ride out the storm? Is there any positive for Donald Trump being a Rhode Island Republican? I mean, it's got to be a pretty strong burden to carry.
Right now, I made the point on Tara's show too. Because of who I am and my background. I mean, I'm more of a Baker Republican. I mean, he's a Republican, but he's the most popular governor in the country. Works well across the aisle, as I do too. He's not a bomb thrower. He's not a name caller. And he gets quite a bit done, and he does quite well. And I think that's been my tenure up at the State House as well. So, that's more of what I would aspire to do or to be. And so as I meet people, I say, I am a Baker Republican, and for these reasons,
Right.
And I think we've got to become more that than, the other side of it. I mean, even his own supporters clearly say, he needs to change his style a little bit, And but that's on the federal level, and it ultimately doesn't affect anything in the state. Let's face it, we got so much work to do in this state. We don't need.
But I'm gonna play devil's advocate with you. In a fairer world, you would be correct. the problems in this state are largely, almost exclusively, because of Democratic rule in the state over now going on. We've been saying 70 years for so long.
Yeah. Was it since 1935?
Right, so we're into the 80s
The
now.
bloodless coup that night?
Right, the bloodless revolution. Yep. We're into the 80s now. It's been 80 years that they've been in charge.
Yep.
And one of the ploys that progressives will say, well, it's astonishing that they get away with this. How often have you heard, well, the Democrats in charge are really Republicans? That's the kind of mental gymnastics that the progressive movement's been able to do in this state. Today legislation was, or probably yesterday, but today or yesterday, legislation was put up by progressive Democrats to cover to throw our laws into a tumult because of the tragedy of the federal shutdown. Mm-hmm. Now, I am not denying that those people have a right to be paid, but certainly one of the leading issues here in Rhode Island is not the impact of the federal shutdown. That's the kind of crap that they can play all the time. Mm-hmm. I will not diminish the notion that the Coast Guard, for the first time in America's history, military is going unpaid. Mm-hmm. I mean, that didn't happen with the Continental Army for the most part. So that's terrible. So I'm not trying to diminish that, but again, the mental gymnastics that they can play and get away with is just astonishing. They will continue to make you guys the party of Trump.
And we have to define ourselves as Rhode Island Republicans who are focused on this state itself. And again, one of the things that models I'm using right now is, if you want to reform, you need to inform. And I think we've done a terrible job of informing people of what it means to be a Republican, what it means to be a capitalist versus a socialist, these kinds of things. And we're seeing a backlash over in Europe now. The far-right groups, are taking over the governments again. People have had enough with the far left and some of the socialist groups. So there has been some I guess a blowback to some of that.
Right.
But when and if that'll happen here, I don't know. But after 80-something years, I keep waiting. But this last election, I had high hopes. I had very high hopes. And I said it's either going to be a great success or it's going to be our Waterloo, our cuss last stand. And it was. Because we didn't work as a team. We didn't have common ideas. We didn't define who we were. We let others, as you're just saying, define us.
You had significant party defections in the last couple of years with people who were longtime Republicans who then looked to gain high office outside of the party.
Yes.
Those people, although notoriously in the case of Mr. Trillo, commanded very little of the ballot box. I did not know if he was going to do well or not. I certainly did not walk in to election coverage and I thinking he was going to do as poorly as he did. That was astonishing. But what do you do about now this external group of Republicans or former Republicans who are so closely identified with the Republican Party? Do you welcome them back? Do you invite them back? Do you open their arms? Is there is there any period of time where if you put down your weapons and come back into the party? Or have they, given the damage that they did to the prospects of beating Gina, and given the ammunition they gave her by essentially enabling, in her minds, a windfall election returns, do you just say, listen, the harm you caused to the party was irreparable? How do you adjust to something like that?
Well, I think that is, once the new leadership is elected, I think then you have really a serious sit-down discussion with those involved.
Right.
And you talk about it, and maybe it is a vote. I mean, we're Democratic, thing. Maybe it is a vote, but, what is everybody's feelings? And I think the majority has to be listened to. And, I had one of the young men I'm running against, he asked me that question the other night at one of the town committees. Would you be open to, inviting people back? And I said, yes, I would be open to it, but, on what basis and what parameters and that kind of thing, and how much damage was done,
right.
And it was irreputable damage, and, that they pay an ultimate price for that,
right.
Look at in Cranston, the mayor got, I think, 10% less votes. I was talking to Jonathan Keith because he got 44 against Gallo 2 years ago. This time he only got 40. But he said, Bob, I looked at the numbers for you and me because I lost by 297 votes. He lost, by, again, 40-60. I was 53-47. But he says, Bob, look at the votes. The mayor's numbers were down at least 10% throughout the city. So, I mean, were people not energized? I mean, what was the reason for that,
Yeah, I mean,
I think that takes a little research too,
okay. So you're open to a conversation to have sort of the, you and I are old enough to get this reference, the Paris peace talks.
Yes.
Hopefully you won't spend years arguing around the shape of the table. But
we don't have time.
We don't
don't have time. We're going to be starting recruiting candidates the day after. And then people said to me, Mike Napolitano, he's a dear friend, and he's not with the party currently, but he'd love to see him come back. But he asked me early on, he says, well, if you ran for party chair, you're going to be focused on party chair, not running for office. I said, yes, that's the commitment I make. You can't do both. I mean, God bless Brandon for trying, but you can't do both. You really got to focus.
Right.
And so I said, yeah, I make that pledge. But if I lose the vote, I mean, I'm not done. I mean, I have a couple of opportunities I'm looking at, and I will run again if in fact this doesn't work out. But I think this is so important. I'm willing to put personal ambition aside to try to accomplish this.
Yeah, I think everyone could agree, regardless of your perspective, in some cases bias, in some cases prejudice, that the party simply can't go on. There in its current mode. There are those who suggest that literally there should almost be a 1 year shutdown, just kind of a decompressing period, and then to invite people back to the table. What would you? Now, that's not going to happen. But what would you say to those people who are so cynical about the future of the GOP in Rhode Island?
We're very short window. I mean, it's a 2-year cycle, very short window. We would have to get right to work. You could have some ongoing meetings and things behind, but if I think we focus our energies on the right things, recruiting people, working team, that kind of thing, I think we can be successful, and I think we can continue. If people don't want to be a part of that, then step away, I think, more than shut it down. We just wouldn't have that kind of time.
Right.
We need to get right to work. And people said that to me. Says, Rep. Lancia, once you're elected, what do you do next day? I says, I'm out recruiting candidates. There will be 113 candidates for next election, and they will be funded.
Excellent, excellent. So you and I have done this before. We've got about 2 or 3 minutes left before the top of the hour, and we can run a little over. Imagine right now, you're at the convention. How many people are in the Central Committee?
I think it's, I don't even know the number, actually.
It's thousands, isn't it?
No. The whole thing together, I think we're about 323 voting members. So.
Okay, so you've got 323 voting members. Give them your speech. Give them right now. I want you to look into their eyes and say, "This is what I'm going to do to resurrect the Republican Party," and also perhaps explain to some of them that a resurrection needs to take place.
Yeah, basically, we found ourselves, at the end. I mean, we are at the end, and we need to rebuild. We need to rebuild quickly, and we need to do it in a short window of time. We need to be reaching out to diverse communities. We need to raise money and make those connections. And I believe I have that ability to do all those things. I've shown that I've been successful. I got elected in a Democratic district 2 times that hadn't seen a Republican legislator in over 30 years. And I think we can do those kinds of things, and I think we can raise money, but I think we need to work together, and I think we need to define ourselves, and we need to do that too. So all those things combined, I mean, that's really, it's a high bar, a huge task, but I think we can accomplish it if we all agree to work together. So I've tried to stay in good stead with most folks, and I think even those that are disaffected, they'd like to come back in the party for that sole purpose of rebuilding the party and winning and turning the state around and saving the state. I'm all ears.
Excellent. Well, I wish you, as always, nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
I know you're going through a period right now where you're kind of looking at weighing your options. Your commitment to staying involved, despite the atrocity of this past election, in and of itself is highly commendable. This state needs sane, moral leadership more now than ever, because the gauntlet was dropped today in a way that I don't think any of us could have ever anticipated. there are forces at work that are looking to centralize our economy into the hands of a failed government. There are people who are looking at our schools, and the best way I could describe all-day kindergarten is A, let's define what it's actually going to accomplish, and B, do I want to hand children over to failures at a younger age? Because there doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency other than rhetoric. I hear political leaders talking about spending the next 10 or 15 years sorting out our school system so we can lose another generation of people. I look at all of this, and I wonder how this state continues on. I just wonder, and despite my dark humor in the past, I don't want to see the state fail. No. But at a certain point, this is me, not you speaking, at a certain point, I wonder if after announcements like today, is that going to be the only cure? Because I'm just not sure what universe these folks exist in. I just don't know anymore.
Agree.
Well, best of luck.
Thank you.
My heart's with you.
God bless you.
All right,
Thank
buddy.
you so much. Always good to see you.
All right, we're gonna take a very quick break right now. Bob Lancia, Representative Lancia, joining the coalition tonight to discuss his candidacy for the chairmanship of the Republican Party. Tall order, but if anyone could do it, I bet you it's you. So, thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break right now. Ellen Smith is going to join us in just a couple minutes. We're going to line things up. We're going to talk about, to me, one of the central atrocities from this sort of sad day here in Rhode Island. And that, of course, is the medical cannabis program here in Rhode Island. Folks, we are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocalLive Broadcast Center in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the naked city, the city of 1,000 stories. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And of course, the mothership, coalitionradio.us. I want to take a moment to thank this segment's sponsor and some of our guiding lights, the folks at YachtClubBottlingWorks.com, Rhode Island's finest boutique soda. A boutique soda that, well, was around before we even knew we needed boutique sodas. I had the option at a local convenience store the other day to taste their attempt at making a pale imitation of Yacht Club soda. Oof, it was rough. Listen, we've got the very best, and we're looking at a playoff game this weekend where you're going to spend time around this table putting together the finest meals, the finest tailgating, if you will, virtual tailgating that you can. Everybody this weekend is a New England Patriots fan in the greater Boston, Rhode Island area. So don't ruin that dinner with getting the refinery soda in the big plastic bottle for 89 cents. Yacht Club soda, pure water, cane sugar, natural flavors. Soda like it was supposed to taste. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back.